Welcome to the Deer Wizard Podcast, conversation shaping the deer industry. I'm your host, Josh Newton, the Deer Wizard. Through interviews, advocacy, and industry news, we deliver field-proven insights to help producers build better herds. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Deer Wizard Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. We appreciate you. We're also on all your major audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're there. We have a guest in the virtual studio today, Mr. Troy Zacchini. He is the Associate Executive Director of NADEFA, or the North American Deer Farmers Association. Troy, how are you on this fine day?
I'm doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Man, I appreciate you coming into the virtual studio and having a chat with me. We got lots to talk about. Why don't you just give the audience a kind of a little bit of a background on yourself, and kind of how you came into the role of Associate Executive Director at NADEFA.
Sure. Well, I started deer farming back in 2000, built a high fence, started a breeding operation straight out of college, and was working in northern Wisconsin at the same time, learning the business as a hunting guide up at Three Lakes, and then my farm is down in Alabama. Was in the business for a number of years, and then got into our local deer association, worked my way onto the board, and then was eventually president for a couple terms there. A few years later, started serving on the NADEFA board, and Sean Schaefer has been talking about slowly moving into retirement over the next couple of years. And we were just happened to be at the last DC fly-in, and his exit was right next to mine. So we were chatting, and he brought up retirement and said that he was looking for someone to kind of come up underneath him and him train for when he is retired. And I just flat out said to him, I said, Sean, do you think that's something that I'd be capable of doing? And he thought so. And so, you know, we chatted a little bit more a number of times over the next couple of months, and he brought it up to the board around July, and they voted me in as Associate Executive Director. So since then, I've been traveling around with Sean to different events. My first one was there at PA with you guys, and since then I've been to U.S. Animal Health Association meeting, and then just at the top 30 this past weekend.
Yeah, I think for a lot of folks, you know, they've seen Sean in that ED role for 20 years or whatever it's been, and you know, as time goes on, of course, we're all subject to becoming old men, and you know, you have to start thinking about those succession plans. Yeah. And so for an organization like NADEFA that's been around for 40 years, there's a ton of history there, and of course Sean has been there for a lot of that, right?
Oh,
and you can't just jump into that role, right?
No.
And so I think what the board's done, rightfully so, is started to create this transition plan where you get a guy like yourself in, get to hang out with Sean, kind of work through the meetings, and I think it's really important on the regulatory side, right, where you get to meet the contacts over at USDA and start integrating yourself deeper into those conversations that happen kind of behind the scenes, right? And that's important. Having that context with the regulatory agencies, kind of from inside, is important. You want to touch on that a little bit, what that starts to look like for you?
Well, I mean, one of the main concerns that I had coming into this was that we were going to go over a slow transition, because working just locally in my state government here in Alabama, the relationships that you build over time, you just can't jump right into. And when you look at someone who's been in the position like Sean has for 18 years, and the relationships he's built up both within the state agencies themselves and in the USDA and the federal government, You can't jump into something like that.
Yeah, it's not a cold
That's
turkey process.
no, no, not at all.
That'd be bad for industry for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So the whole plan is a transition over time, and even after a couple of years, um, I'd like to see Sean stay on in order to help facilitate, some of those relationships and keep them strong. But I've been going along. I think uh, they are one of the most important things, if not the most important thing for our industry on the federal level, is just those people knowing you, having experience working through issues with you, and getting to know one another. I mean, as you work through problems together, you obviously get to know the other person you're working with much better. So Sean's had a great relationship. I've watched him, uh, how other people interact with him, from state vets to all the higher ups in the USDA, and he has the utmost respect out of them, and he has the utmost respect for them. So I mean, it's good. You can feel that they have good relationships, and those are the type of things that we need to keep with our industry. So I plan on stepping in and trying to build those same relationships and keep them strong for our industry.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that NADEFA is kind of putting together more of a pragmatic approach to the process because again, those you can't just make those relationships overnight, right?
That's
Like
right.
it's so hard um, to just step in fresh. So it's good to see that that's happening. You had mentioned a few of the events that you've been you've been working on and
Mm-hmm.
going to and kind of meeting people and saying, "Hey, I'm Troy. I'm here to help." Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's good. The USAHA, can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's kind of a an undervalued meeting that they have each year. Can you just kind of walk us through what United States Animal Health Conference is and how it works, et cetera?
Yeah, it's held in a different part of the country every year, but it's an opportunity to where you have your state vets come, you have USDA, APHIS, you have different different industry stakeholders come and show up from national associations are all a part of it, and then you have speakers come in who deal with different diagnostic tests or that. It's a collective group, but then there's also suggestions that come out of those meetings that get passed on to USDA, APHIS, as far as suggestions on what stakeholders and state agencies would like to see the USDA bring forward, adjust, change over the next year. So it has a direct influence on policy coming out of DC.
Yeah. So, and I think to highlight a point, it's important that when Troy says stakeholders, right? Like that's you and I, right?
That's right.
That's the deer farmers and the elk farmers and the people that raise cervids in the country. And of course, as we all know, the kind of most tedious thing that we have to deal with is CWD regulation. And
Right.
so when I want to highlight that this is the reason it's really important to have good relationships, even when you disagree with people, with your regulatory bodies. So, like in a state like mine in Pennsylvania, we are 100% regulated by the Department of Agriculture. It's important for us in the state to have a good relationship. And what does that mean? That just means talking and engaging with these people to see where they're at, telling these folks, hey, these are the things that are important to our industry for long-term viability, and having that understanding. That way, when you go into a forum like USAHA, right, you can work on these like larger, bigger picture things, right? And you don't want to have um, that breakdown where folks are not getting along. I mean, we already have our challenges with wildlife agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because CWD doesn't care where. where it sits on the fence. Can be inside or outside. It,
That's
it
right.
doesn't it doesn't recognize those boundaries. And so having a good collective voice is important. Now I haven't personally been to a USAHA conference before. There's a specific group just for the deer and elk industry, isn't that right?
That's right. That's right. We've got a Cervid committee that you know they pass recommendations on to USDA. So we have our own committee that deals with all the issues that the entire that's elk, fallow deer, all cervids deal with. From issues with TB brucellosis testing. I know that we've had a number of issues where we've had false positive tests and have bad results from that. And um, I think we're making some progress where there's some new diagnostics that may become available on down the road. A little bit better than the DPP stuff, which I know that we've
That's
had.
the blood test, right?
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. We've had some limitations on being able to get that done. So as far as the platforms that they use to do the testing on, it's been limited here lately. But USDA brought up the fact that they recognize that that's a problem, and they're looking for other avenues.
Yeah,
So
that's important. I've chatted with a couple of producers that, they get a false positive or they get locked up with a quarantine, if you will, from a TB test, and there's no kits, right? And they're just
right.
like sitting there, and they're, the only other option is doing the stick test, which, if you've ever done that, it needs a check. So you got to
Yeah.
handle those animals again physically. And, the whole purpose of the blood test was to make it a one shot go, because it's not the easiest to handle a whole herd of cervids, on a whim. It requires planning. Of course, there's associated risk with capture myopathy, and the list goes on and on. So it's good to see that, these things are being brought up and addressed, by folks at NADEFA, and the recognition from, like USDA, that, hey, like we got to find backups to this, and not put the burden on industry. It's our regulations that are potentially causing this, right? So
Yeah.
that's good to hear. Um, so that's a yearly thing, right?
That's a yearly thing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we see we'll call them fruits. I use that term lightly, but because a lot of times regulations don't really bear fruit. But I digress. We see those things from previous years come forward in future years.
Well, something to recognize too. It's not just what gets passed, but what dies there also. You go and represent the industry in these particular forums, not only to push positive things for the industry, but also to try and push back against things that are negative towards the industry. So this past convention, there it was actually nice. There was nothing negative um, directed towards the industry that needed to be pushed back against. So
First time in the history of man. I Every time I turn around, I feel like there's something that could potentially be put on us or added to what it is we do, and of course
yeah.
it's frustrating, but we work through it. So
Well, and we've got just not to cut you off there, but everybody's got their radar up about CWD all the time, and of course we finished talking about the TB brucellosis testing, but they've got that New World screwworm down in Mexico, and it's inching closer to Texas now. It's been a long time since we've had screwworm in the U.S. It could pose a real problem to all livestock, not just cervids. So I mean, it would be a real problem if it creeped its way up in here, and that's something else that we've been on calls about with the USDA, and they're developing a playbook right now for that in the unfortunate case that it shows up here in the U.S.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it is worth discussing a little bit more. I had saw, oh, I think it was yesterday or the day before. I had shared a news video on the Deer Wizard Media page, just
Mm.
relating to it was out of Texas, and they were interviewing one of the cattle guys down there, and they found a case like 230 miles from the border. And of course, I think for a lot of the audience, they're just like, well, maybe what is New World screwworm, and like why do we have to be aware of it? But if you chat with anybody in their late 60s or 70s that
Yeah,
had livestock in the
yeah.
US, it was devastating. Can you touch a little bit on what it is and why it's important?
Well, it's to my understanding, it is it's a fly that lays larvae down into an open wound on any mammal at all. And in the case where the larvae not only eats the dead or dying flesh, but eats the live flesh itself. So it can essentially get an infestation through that wound where the animal can get eaten alive. And they reproduce relatively fast, as if you know anything about the fly's life cycle. But the last time we've seen it in the cervid species was in the key deer. Um, I believe that was maybe back in the 90s. They had a small outbreak that they were able to handle down there, but just awful, devastating looking pictures. And we deal with fawns being born would be very, very difficult to keep those flies off of. So we need to be vigilant when we see open wounds, and if you see maggots in those wounds, is definitely something to be concerned about. So
Yeah, it's 4 degrees at my place today, so there's no New World screwworm where I am. But
yeah,
and certainly you can see the movement of New World screwworm geographically south to north, right? So
right.
there'll be more limited season for it if or when it does arrive in the United States. But I do want to stress this because it is important. Um, it indiscriminately kills livestock or
Yes.
pretty much any animal.
Yeah.
Um, and it is a serious threat. So like maybe 3 months ago, I saw a release. I think it was from maybe USDA, and they had approved Dectomax as a emergency
Mm.
medication for treatment. So just I want people to make sure they keep an eye on this. It's not a it's important, right? Like I can't stress it enough. It's important to stay vigilant on your farms because like if those fawns come out and you're in the south and like there's kind of New World screwworm, even if it's 100 miles from where you are, like those are just the identified cases, right? And
Yeah.
so just know they will chew those fawns up to pieces real quick, and they will spread very fast.
Yeah.
So I think the the main thing they do is they breed sterile flies, right? And they just
That's right.
like airdrop them suckers from airplanes
Yeah.
and let them spread. So I think they're ramping up the lab in that it's a Air Force base or something in Texas. Is that right?
Texas.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yep.
And so because I, I I thought it was like Panama had the only male production fly facility, sterile male fly
I think you're
facility.
right. I think you're right. I read something about that also. Yep.
Yeah, and like USDA was saying they need 22 million, like if it comes, they need 22 million sterile flies a day, and the Panama facility was only doing like 8. That was their capacity or something, 8 million a day. And so they're trying to get that up and going, but anyway, for those of you with animals, just stay up on this because it's important, right? Like it's a we look at the regulatory environment, and of course, we always think CWD, TB, Bruce, whatever. But like
EHD.
EHD, right? Yeah, yeah. Sorry, you know,
Not the regulatory, but
I forget that, and I apologize to everybody with animals in the South or even up into the upper plains. I've never, knock on wood, I've just never dealt with EHD where I am. So it's out of my brain, but man, we had a bad EHD season this year.
Hmm.
Through the Midwest and such. I guess we'll segue into that. There's some exciting stuff coming on with EHD from what I hear.
Yeah, yeah. I had a conversation with Dr. Seabury a while back, and he's working on collecting data and feels confident that he can come up with a genetic breeding value associated with EHD. So, I mean, to me, that would be exciting, and there's more work with vaccines and that with EHD and you're seeing more research projects being done here and there throughout. So we're getting more tools, hopefully relatively soon in the toolkit, and I'm really excited about the genetic part of the equation. Uh, I think that's going to be a game changer for us here down in the South.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to think about, kind of where we were even just 10 years ago on a lot of this stuff. And then from a disease standpoint, whether it be viral or, prions or,
Yeah.
even just bacteria, right? And those, like you said, the tools that come along with this research is pretty amazing that we have access to that, as a relatively small, animal industry.
Yeah.
So there's tons of stuff that's happening behind the scenes that is really cool, and those tools, right, like plural,
Yeah.
are important, right? Because you can implement all these different strategies, right? So you're working on your genetics. That's a longer term thing. But then you got your vaccines, you got your topical applications, you have just, management of water and dirt, so to speak, and like
Hmm.
all those things play into. And again, I'm not the expert on this, but like they're all things that you can do to try to minimize that risk, and ultimately, have animals that you can sell and make a profit on. So it's awesome to hear. Um, I want to shift gears back into CWD stuff.
Okay.
We jump from USAHA, and I want to talk about USDA, APHIS, and cooperative agreement funding. And
Hmm.
so I just want to, we've chatted with folks about this before, but I want to talk about what it is, right? And why it's important for people to understand that, and then how to utilize it. So can you just give us a real high level on what the cooperative agreement program is?
Well, it's part of the larger USDA APHIS allocates a large group of money related to CWD activities to states, tribal governments, universities, and other partners. So the farm servant end is roughly around 6 million or so, plus plus our indemnity, and that comes out of some of that. But a lot of it has worked through your state ag departments apply to the USDA for grant money for different programs. The most popular one that I've seen throughout the states, of course, is the genetic testing. So in my particular state, what we've been able to do is get so much money allocated to cover our GBV and our codon marker testing, and we of course we get the genetic makeup, the background. So we cover the tubes here and the testing gun, and of course the shipping. I know in other states that I've talked to, their states have even been able to get funding to cover the test tubes and the guns. So I mean, they pay almost nothing. The farmer pays almost nothing for the GBV testing. So you know, part of even coming up with the GBV came out of the cooperative agreements. The research that Texas A&M and Dr. Seabury did came from the cooperative agreement funding. We've been able to get cooperative agreement funding for doing the work towards having a blood test for CWD. So all very positive things related to our industry that we've been geared specifically around trying to find diagnostic tools and tools that help either prevent CWD from showing up in our animals, or work towards even a cure towards CWD. So this is all associated around positive things towards our industry.
Yeah. I've of course, you always talk with people within the industry, at trade shows and stuff like that, or on the phone. And, I've gotten feedback from people that, they're just like, oh, we should defund the CWD program. There's dollars that are being spent that shouldn't. And I want to make this distinction clear that, the cooperative agreement funding is a direct incentive for producers in these states to work on the various things that are important to them, right? And so, like Troy, you had mentioned GBV testing, markers, parentage, and like that's been, and I'll speak for Pennsylvania, right? So since that program started, our producers in the state have realized somewhere between $500 and $750,000 of funds that they didn't have to put out of their pocket to get that technology implemented. I know I've used it personally. We've tried to be creative in some of the other areas that are important to CWD management, not just GBV testing. It could be identification. It could be, call programs, where we're literally changing the genetic makeup of our deer herds across Pennsylvania, and it's like an insurance policy, except we've partnered with our Department of Ag, who essentially has partnered with USDA APHIS to tap these funds, right? And so, what do you think that, I mean, I look at the impact here. I kind of know what the impact is. What do you think the impact is, across the U.S. for that program, specifically on our private industry side?
Well, I think it's huge. If you look at the average deer farmer and what they would have to spend to, just test 50 animals, and they're running a small business. Every dollar counts. And yourself, you run a deer farm for a business and continue to do so. Profit margins aren't huge. So if we can, any type of test, any type of help we can get towards something positive for our herds, it's a win-win. I just not only on the personal farm level, but look at how far we've pushed the advancements we've made through the genetic, just coming up with the genetic breeding value has been a game changer for the entire industry. I believe that it's one of the pathways out of this CWD problem. There's always going to be CWD around. It's always going to be a disease that we have to deal with. But if we can keep it from infecting our herds, we can go on about our lives and continue to function and have a thriving industry. So, I mean, all that came from the cooperative agreement money. And, just talking about, to plug NADEFA, we've been the spearhead and you've been a part of it since the beginning of the USDA funding, and that going to DC, all organized by NADEFA, and going and talking to our U.S. representatives from the individual states have allowed us to start the program and then continue increasing the funding year after year. So,
Yeah,
so
we're super fortunate here in Pennsylvania that we have Congressman Glenn Thompson. He's the chair of the Ag
yeah.
Committee, and of course he I met him like maybe 10, 12 years ago. I was doing a talk for a bunch of local folks, and he happened to be there. And I remember standing in this hunting lodge, and they asked everybody to take their shoes off. This is the middle of winter, so I'm standing there in front of 40 people with no shoes on. I got my socks, but anyway, he was there, and I got to meet him, and he was just, basically, he's just been super supportive of ag industries, right? And he's like, "Hey, we got to fix this." Now, he wasn't chairman at the time, but um, he's been a leader for us, and he's been able to get funds allocated through the farm bill and such for these different projects. So shout out to GT Thompson for stepping up and helping the deer industry try to survive through this time. I do want to comment on one thing, because I know this, each state is a little different, but I can kind of touch on what we're seeing over here in Pennsylvania on the CWE front. I know that the attitude around kind of CWD eradication, which was kind of, call it 15 years ago, that was kind of the stance, right?
Hmm.
State would
Yeah.
go positive and then kill herds and so on and so forth. And of course, that is still being done today, but the conversations are changing because we have these tools that many of them are birthed from these cooperative agreement funds, that the conversation is changing to management. And
Hmm.
so the metric for CWD is now starting to change too. And it's more of a we're not looking to eradicate, we're looking to manage. And what does that management look like? And it's okay to find CWD. It's actually preferred because we now have tools to deal with it, right? And so I think the conversation is going to start shifting to low prevalence.
Hmm.
And then ultimately, I think we have the tools to go from low prevalence to no prevalence. Have you seen some of those or heard some of those conversations kind of behind the scenes?
I think that there's more of a lean towards that. It will be interesting to see what the new CWD standards look like when they come out.
When's that
I will.
happening?
That's
That's
I,
an internal
I
joke. You
that's
said it,
yeah.
not me.
Yeah, I know. I jumped right into that. Some people say 6 months, some people say a year.
Yeah.
I'd probably lean towards the latter, but that all depends on how many government shutdowns we have between now and then.
Yeah.
So, but there's definitely, I think that there's a sense towards moving in the direction that you're talking about. I mean, I'd love to see us get to a point to where if there is a positive on a farm, we go in, we test an entire farm, remove the positives, continue to breed for the great negative GBV values, and that farm continue to function and continue on, making money and functioning, and not we're not just removing everything off the landscape. But there's some things that need to happen fast with that. Positive animals need to get removed off the landscape. So we need to be able to move a little faster than what we do now. But
Yeah.
I'd like to see that eventually. I know you would too, and I'm sure everyone watching would like to get to that point. And I think it's a possibility in the future for sure,
Yeah.
depending
It,
on your individual states and um, how I don't mean to use a bad term, but how progressive they are
yeah.
towards the research and receptive and the actual science. So.
Yeah, I see. It's interesting. A little off topic, but kind of still on the same. Is like you look at a state like Missouri, right? And
Mhm.
again, it's my opinion, not yours. They just went scorched earth, at least in their wild herds, and of course that trickles down through the farm industry. And MDC pulled back, right? Like they
Hmm.
canceled all of their winter calling. So, for those, and of course, I'm not from Missouri, so if I misspeak, I apologize to those folks in Missouri. But basically, they're setting up corn piles late season, and the sharpshooters are coming in with thermals, and they're just smoking these deer to try to lower the herd down. And the hunters absolutely erupted, and they were like, "Stop killing our deer." And
Hmm.
MDC and a huge policy change, because once they write these regs, like that's it for the season. That's the way
Yeah.
these game agencies work. And they pulled back like with basically an emergency rule, and we're like, hey, we're not doing this. You start to see these cracks, if you will, in the CWD programs and the reevaluation. And it's hunter driven, right? And I think for our industry, engaging with the public, aka hunters, is super important. Where do you think NADEFA's role is long term on those kinds of things?
Well, we're always and always have been staying active in the hunting industry. Part of on my schedule here in the next month, we have two big hunting conventions: the Dallas Safari Club show that's going to be in Atlanta next month, and the Safari Club International show that's going to be also next month, but that's going to be in Nashville. So NADEFA is going to be at those shows. Either myself or Sean and myself are going to be at them, and we have members who are there who have high fence hunting operations. So it's good that we're there. We can come and speak with them and check and see how our end market is doing, and also gives us a chance to talk with the leadership in those organizations that also go to DC and also have influence on policy. Both of those clubs have been very good for the Cervid industry. They're not. They have kind of been a bridge between us and a lot of the other um, anti high fence hunting, groups, and that they've actually, been a buffer for us. They both of those have, trophy designations for estate type hunts. So they carve us out our own area, and a lot of those individuals both hunt free range and high fence. So it gives us an opportunity. We participate in those events and are able to, again, give our story and our narrative and our take on CWD on a number of these hunting issues, because uh, without hunting, our industry, the cervid industry, is pretty much dead.
Yep.
I mean, we have pets at that point. So
Yeah,
so
that's spot on. It's so important, regardless of how many, breeder auctions you go to or how much you'd like the industry to be a certain way. Our stock on our breeding farms is the genetic material that goes into hunting ranches for those folks to develop their herds and
that's right.
ultimately pay for that ground and keep it out of development. So it's important to note that. We'll say that here. I'm gonna try to say that on every show. Hunting
Well,
is
and
the hunting is the backbone of our industry.
and most of us were hunters getting into this anyway. So you know, we this is how we all got started. We just couldn't get enough
Yep. So
of
true.
deer, you know,
Yeah.
just planting food plots and being hunters. So this was our fix, that we got in. We all got into the deer industry because of our passion for the outdoors and passion
Hun-
for hunting and animals and
Yep.
all of it. So
Yeah, 100%. It's
yeah,
it's the it's the backbone of everything. Just
right.
our youth and experience in the outdoors. It all led to one place.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to wrap up. I know NADEFA has a convention coming up here. I just want to kind of highlight some of the main things, when it is, where it is, etc. So take it away.
Yeah, Sandusky, Ohio, March 18th through the 21st. We're having it at the Kalahari Resort. So come bring the whole family. If you register and come in, you get free passes for the kids for the water park. So I mean, there's something for everybody there. So while we're looking at different breeding operations and the antler competition and dart gun competition and all that we have, the kids can be in the water park having fun. We also have a number of speakers that come in, talk about different things, related to our industry. We've got a new deer farmers conference that we have every year class that is a great introduction. I know that you've presented during part of that for a number of years. So I mean, we really have something from the person looking to get into the industry or just starting out into the industry to the veteran who's been in the industry for 20, 30 years. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great event.
It's probably one of the largest trade shows in the industry. So there's, typically between 90 and 100 vendors there that you can chat with, supporting vendors. So,
Yes.
fence companies, animal health companies, and then you got your deer farmers and some of the state associations set up. So it should be good. And if you don't know what Kalahari is, just type in Kalahari water parks into Google. I suspect that it's not just for the kids. I suspect that there will be some deer farmers ripping down those slides, having a good time or hanging out in the wave pool or whatever. So
I don't doubt it.
I think that's coming for sure.
Yeah.
So. Well, Troy, it's always good to have you on the show. We appreciate the insights that you share from NADEFA standpoint. I'll make sure that I link up the convention packet and the NADEFA website in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can click on those right in the podcast app. So you can just check that out if you can. It's important to make sure that you have an NADEFA membership. You get access to the North American Deer Registry, and it's a good organization to support. And one of the ways that you can do that is through membership. The other great part about being a member is you get to voice your concerns to the board, to guys like Troy and Sean, and that really is the only way that our industry can move forward. Because without the insights from people on the ground in numbers, these guys they can only go, so far. So that direct insight back to the folks at NADEFA is really important. So consider signing up and grabbing a membership.
Yeah. If I could just say a couple things.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, I mean, associations, both NADEFA on a federal level and your state deer associations have two functions. One is to protect our industry. The other is to promote the industry. Your state associations protect and promote your industry within your state. NADEFA does it on a federal level. So it's very important to get involved and become members of both your state and your federal, associations. So they're twofold, and we work together with states, all year long. So I mean, there's always issues popping up here and there that the federal end can help, advise your state ag commissions, So we all need to work together towards this. And Josh, I really appreciate what you do. There's, you're a voice for the industry here on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and all of those forums. We appreciate what you do and how you do it too. You're a great representation of the industry, buddy.
Appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, if you have questions for Troy, want to know what NADEFA's got going on, we'll make sure we have those links in the show notes for you. And stay tuned for another episode of the Deer Wizard podcast.